The manhole slowly lifted up, the purple hair of Shinso slowly rising from it. His forehead and eyes slowly appeared as he took a few quick glances around the large room. The room was filled with old cargo trucks, chains hanging from the roof as the same pipes from underground flowed in every direction. Shinso noted the walls and the doors looked much more modern and technological compared to the center of the room. Did they leave the old trucks and chains for spare parts? To the left and right were pairs of doors, seemingly leading to what Shinso believed would be the actual laboratory part of the base. With a quick hand movement, Shinso beckoned Ochako to follow as he climbed swiftly out the hole, Ochako quickly and quietly following after him. Quickly, the two hid behind one of the trucks, crouching in order to stay as hidden as possible. Shinso quickly glanced around, corner to corner of the room. Shinso furrowed his eyes as he slowly took out his phone. He silently turned to Ochako, pointing at the silent switch on his phone. Ochako nodded, taking her phone out and switching it to silent as they both turned the brightness down. Shinso quickly typed up a message, sending it to Ochako's number. Ochako stared at her phone until the message came through. They have cameras. Shinso. Ochako frowned, however Shinso continued to look around before noticing something. Just above them hung an older-looking lamp. Shinso turned to Ochako, beckoning at her grappling hooks, then pointing up towards the lamp. Ochako nodded silently as she aimed up. She launched the grappling hook upwards, smashing the light bulb, bringing a wave of darkness into the room. Light enough to see, but dark enough where potentially the cameras couldn't pick up on them. Shinso turned back to look at the camera. A red light came from it, however it wasn't moving. Either A, they weren't watching the cameras, or B, they were currently watching a different camera. Shinso's eyes darted to technological-looking doors against the walls. If there was a Nomu guarding the tunnel below, then there must be Nomu guarding the doors. Shinso looked around until he spotted the heavy chains in the air. He brought his phone up yet again. Ochako's phone just barely lit up. We'll use the chains for potential Nomu. They are all probably second-hand from Garaki. Most likely not too strong. Be ready. Shinso. Ochako nodded. Shinso pointed from the chains to the door as he began silently creeping towards it. Ochako quietly zero-gravitated herself in the chains. Once done, she quietly floated behind Shinso. Shinso inched as close to the door as he could, as Ochako floated above it, holding the chains in a downward arch right in front of the door. She tied one end of the chains to a metal beam on the roof, as she held the other end. Ochako nodded, signaling for Shinso to commence with the plan. Shinso knocked on the door, immediately backing up a few feet away. After only just a moment, the door opened as a Nomu entered slowly. As soon as the Nomu was through the door, Ochako wrapped the chair around its neck. She floated higher with the Nomu now fighting desperately to free itself from its suffocation. Ochako tied the rest of the chains to another beam, releasing the zero gravity on the chains and herself. She landed lightly on the ground, her boots absorbing the impact, as the Nomu hung by the neck, struggling to free its neck from the industrial chains. After a minute or two, the Nomu slowly but surely stopped moving. Ochako couldn't help but cringe at the sight of the being suffocating to death. It must have hurt. Unlike Shinso's brainwashing, that was a slow death. Ochako felt a hand on her shoulder, making her jump just slightly. Shinso nodded silently before creeping under the now hanging body, now making his way into the hallway while staying as low as possible. Ochako took a silent breath, wiping sweat from her forehead as she followed suit. The two crept silently down the halls until eventually reaching an older-looking door. Shinso raised a hand, signaling for Ochako to stop. Shinso slowly opened the door. The room didn't match the rest of the technological and piped hallway. There was a desk with an old laptop sitting on it, a few storage shelves lining the walls, and a rack with an old guard uniform. Shinso slowly crept inside, with Ochako following behind. Shinso allowed her in, silently closing the door behind her. This is the old guard's office, probably the guard who previously watched over the docks for night duty, Shinso whispered, standing properly as he walked over to the shelving, sorting through papers, clothes, and other utensils. And if he were a guard, he probably had. Found it. Shinso pulled out an old handgun. Ochako gulped. Do we really need that? She asked. Shinso sighed deeply. With the rest of the Nomu, it's best we try and shoot them in the head. We don't have the ability to rely on our quirks in these hallways. I doubt all of them speak, and they don't just have chains lying around everywhere. It's this or nothing. Shinso said, "We should be thankful they didn't convert the whole building. Here, take this." Shinso threw something in Ochako direction. Ochako, who barely caught it due to the darkness of the room, looked down at her hands to see a knife. She gulped. "Keep it close," Shinso said as he once again got low, searching through lower cabinets. After a few moments of searching, his fingers wrapped around something circular and dusty. He pulled it out to see what appeared to be a silencer. Why would a dock guard have something like this? Not to scare any of the people in the city. Shinso shook his head as he equipped the silencer to the pistol, loading it and prepping it. With a deep breath, Shinso led the way to the door. Once again creeping out of it, the two crept once again through the halls. As they searched, Shinso carefully peered over each corner. Little Nomu were found as they crept around, checking door to door. Any Nomu that were spotted were quickly dealt with by Shinso's surprising accuracy, along with any cameras in the halls. "You sure do know how to use that thing," Ochako said quietly, yet shakily. Shinso didn't respond for a few moments. "You should too. They taught us how they are used and how those without quirks use them to perform villainous acts. It's not hard to pick up if you know the technique." "Now shush," Shinso said quietly as he peeked through one of the doors. Suddenly his eyes grew wide at one of the doors he opened. He turned back towards Ochako for a moment. Ochako didn't need him to signal or say anything. That look he had said it all. Shinso found him. Ochako quickly, yet still trying to be as silent as possible, peered around the doorframe. Her eyes grew wide as tears started to form. There he was, sitting behind a glass wall in bed. His green hair was messy, while he wore a green tattered shirt with worn white arm bracers that she assumed he never took off from when he was kidnapped. Izuku didn't seem to react to the door opening. Granted, Shinso had opened it very silently. In fact, he didn't seem to be moving at all. She couldn't see his face. His back was turned to her. She had to see him. She had to see his eyes. Ochako instinctively made to go to him, however a forceful arm pulled her back. Ochako, without thinking, angrily looked at whoever was blocking her path. However, her gaze was matched with a much angrier one. Shinso's piercing eyes shot directly into her own as she remembered the promise she had made to him. Before Shinso could say anything, however, steps could be heard from a few meters away. Instantly, Shinso pinpointed a staircase just down the hall, seemingly where the steps were coming from. Shinso quickly and silently closed the door before quietly dragging Ochako back down the hall and behind a corner. Shinso and Ochako quietly peered down the hall to see a woman, her red hair long and waving behind her, the mechanical glasses taking up much of her upper face, a white dirty lab coat covering most of her body. She seemed to be carrying a skeleton with blonde hair. Shinso's eyes grew wide at the realization that the person she was carrying was Monoma. What had they done to him? The doctor, believed to be Asagiri, walked into the room Izuku was in. Ochako made to once again go in, however Shinso once again blocked her. They couldn't advance just yet. Asagiri may be there, but Yosuke wasn't with her. He was somewhere else. A few murmurs could be heard before Asagiri walked out the room again, heading back up the staircase. Shinso turned to Ochako. "We follow her. We do not go into where Izuku is not yet. He isn't the only person here we need to save," Shinso said harshly before turning the corner. Ochako balled her hand into a fist, before following Shinso's lead. The two crept silently up the stairs Asagiri had gone up before they had made it to the third floor. Asagiri walked into another room, guarded by another Nomu, closing the door behind her. Shinso looked up at the pipe-lined roof. There were small spaces between the pipes. Too small for him to climb through, but potentially just wide enough for someone a bit smaller to squeeze through. He turned back towards Ochako and pointed up towards the roof, directing her route towards the Nomu. Ochako took a deep breath, her hand clenching the knife Shinso had given her earlier. Slowly, Ochako floated to the roof, crawling as silently as she could through the spaces between the pipes. There was just enough space between the actual roof and the pipes for her to crouch through. Slowly, she made her way down the hallway above the pipes until she was just above the Nomu. Ochako branded her knife. The brain of the Nomu was exposed. She had to do it for Izuku. Ochako silently slid back through the pipes until she silently hung just above the Nomu's head. She released her grip on the pipe, falling onto Nomu's shoulders as the blade of the knife pierced the brain folds of the Nomu. With a gasp, the Nomu started to fall, however Ochako touched the Nomu before it could hit the ground. The dead purple body started to silently float. Shinso appeared next to Ochako, who was trying to control her breathing. She could feel the heart in her chest pounding. She had to get it together. Suddenly, the two heard screaming coming from behind the door. Screams of pain along with sounds of machines and electricity. I think we've done it. A woman's voice cried over the extra noise from around her. Yosuke, come look. Without warning, Shinso silently opened the door, pulling Ochako in after him. The two quickly hid behind one of the desks in the room. Shinso and Ochako peeked over the desk to see Asagiri and Yosuke looking in front of a large supercomputer at what seemed to be a container, with a ball of what seemed to be a brightly glowing rainbow sort of essence. Oh no, Ochako thought. They copied one for all. Shinso quickly looked around to see a large horizontal container with what seemed to be a body in it. Ochako and Shinso quickly looked at each other and nodded. Shinso quietly turned on his comms. 3rd floor, top left. Now.